Hybrid Pathways has partnered with industry-recognized security expert and global Chief Information Security Officer Roland to share experiences and knowledge about timely security topics. Today, Tom Hazen, Managing Director at Hybrid Pathways, is talking to Roland about enabling the next-generation workforce by securing the next-generation work site. Roland is highly credentialed in this area after his extensive experience as Chief Information Security Officer at ByteDance and TikTok, ADP, EMC, and the military. He has been honored with industry recognitions including IDG CISO Hall of Fame, CISO 100, Information Security Executive of the Year, and one of the most influential people in security. He is a sought-after public speaker and has been featured in global publications, national television, and has lectured for many governments and universities around the world. He wrote the book, Becoming a Global Chief Security Executive Officer.
Welcome, Roland. Excited today to have you here with another one of our discussions around today's CISO and how we can make them effective. Today we're going to talk about enabling the next generation workplace and workforce, more importantly, and keeping those safe and secure. Now, I know that CISOs must have had a lot of long nights and a very tough time during the pandemic when the workplace certainly changed almost overnight. Can you talk to us and tell us a little bit on what actually changed during that time frame?
Yeah, I think everyone's initial reaction is, well, we've always had VPNs. The reality is it's scale. Right, it's the amount of how people access information and what type of information. We might have had VPNs for accessing email or some remote workers, but when the entirety of your workforce goes to a work from home status, it changes the level that you have to manage, maintain, and care for an infrastructure and the services truly you have to provide. I think the other thing that broadly changed is the expectations of the workers, right? Our people, our employees. It is a different workforce now, and not just that people quote unquote liked working from home. It changed the way that communities worked. It changed the way that families work, and it also changed the way that businesses work. And in some, it worked for better from a financial perspective. In others, that's reversing a little bit. But the workforce has changed their expectations. So this isn't a one and done. It was a pandemic. Now everyone's coming back. That's simply not going to happen. And I think picking just a little bit on that topic of what they're doing remotely has changed. When you had some apps that were served up by Citrix infrastructures, or you had some VPNs where people would get to certain types of information and do it locally on their machines. But when you're actually bringing the business to the edge or outside the edge, that changes a lot of the principles of how compute works in your environments and how you secure that. And another thing that's changed is obviously location, right? We used to protect four walls and sometimes the PCs that went out of the environment or the mobile devices or what have you. Now the business has truly extended its operating area significantly. And so where is that? Whose responsibility is that? Those sort of things are what CSOs and CISOs have to be thinking about in the paradox of today's next generation workforce as we start to talk about how do you enable them.
That's great. Now, we talked a little bit in there about there were assets in place, and how can organizations leverage those assets? Another way of saying what didn't change.
I think, obviously for smaller organizations, continuing to build up those capabilities and add technology that supports remote connectivity, the security around those environments. But we also had, important changes over the last 5 years with SASE environments and building security and authentication capabilities at the edge, allowing tangibility, touching of the portions of your infrastructure data need to be accessed at that time from remote locations. So what we've seen organizations do is really expand that. How do we, instead of building bigger pipes coming into existing infrastructure inside our environment, what we're seeing are organizations moving their applications and their business functions and processes to the edge of their environment, right? And so what does that do? Well, first, you can, instead of kind of like we used to do third party with Citrix, they would only get the application that they needed, right? And so what you're seeing now are organizations that are saying when my employee, that's a call center employee, accesses their infrastructure for their 8 hours, 10 hours, or 12 hours they're working, I can present them with what they need at the time that they need it at the edge as they start to move that. That's one thing. The second thing that's, I think, changing is how we look at total workforce. That's not a term we use a lot, right? We have employees and contractors and third parties and fourth parties, but what's our total workforce? And how does that total workforce access the assets they need to do the job for the business? And so we start to see the changes in how we treat third parties and the integration of those platforms actually to come together to be how I present information to my total workforce for the type of employee or resource they are at the time that they need it.
Sounds like identity, again, is still continues to be a major driver in the space. So that's a lot. There's a lot to do. How do we prioritize? How do we set the plan and really help drive the business needle?
Well, I talk with my peers all the time in this area, and you kind of hit on a big portion of it. And obviously, it's identity. Right? So we have to solve for any identity area that we haven't solved for. So if we have, multiple platforms, non-centralized identity management, we have to do that better and make sure that we have the capability to have that both in a SASE environment, a CASB environment, an enterprise that can use the same infrastructure that we can manage and then add additional types of authentication defense. And whether it's multi-factor, it's any of the new type of technologies that enable single sign-on or sharing of cross-credentials across your digital ecosystem. It's important to have that in place and have those options based on the type of worker or third party coming in to access your environment. So that is clearly a requirement for us to get right. I think the other part of what security risk and privacy practitioners has to be thinking about. And there's probably many things, but I mean, just think about cloud infrastructure and the use of cloud storage. How do we use that? Sometimes that was opportunistic. Sometimes organizations have fully migrated to like a Google Workspace or an Office 365 where they're using Cloud SharePoint or they're using Cloud OneDrive as their management architecture. Organizations are going to have to get comfortable with that. And if that means that they have to improve and increase their security capabilities to defend the data where it lives, they're going to have to do that because migrating that type of information inside and outside an enterprise environment to remote work as remote locations is costly from a network perspective. It's hard to manage because now you're talking about bifurcated concept and internal management and then going externally. So thinking about how we manage our data in cloud environments for access. And then, of course, how do we prepare these applications for mobility? I mean, in general, some things we just we hadn't offered previously to our employees outside. Could they get their email? Could they get to a portal? Could they do certain things? Certainly. Could they access maybe their internal file shares? Absolutely. But could they use robust business applications that were built for internal environments externally? Not always. So we're going to have to make sure that our business applications and environment are prepared for edge or cloud use. Perfect.
There's a lot to do again, but... And we kind of talked there a little bit about the people and the process, but how do we leverage technology to help speed up the digital transformation that's happening?
I think we have huge opportunities. I mean, we have, if you think about next generation authentication that companies like Microsoft, Amazon, Google have all made available to us, and the ability to do shared single sign-on capabilities. If you look at some of the, the work that's been done in the SASE environment on Edge Cloud Connect, and the ability to do like zero trust models for the type of employee you have. All of those things are important. We have to leverage those and think about them in different ways. SASE was originally used for Edge Connect authorization of multiple tenants or multiple management across different internal cloud platforms, essentially, and access and egress from enterprise. Well, that can be turned around and used in so many different ways, right? As we build our business application for external use, if you will, expanding those infrastructures to be able to supply that. In fact, I see in the future an entire change of how we use third parties access our information. I see it will not be any different than the way our employees will. Based on their identity, they'll be pointed to the right asset in the right application at the time of access on the edge and delivered that directly to them wherever they are around the world.
Which was going to introduce another topic for another day, but about where's the data and how do we protect it. But interesting. How about the other half of the equation? So an enterprise's most valuable assets are its people. Mm-hmm. And what does this change in workplace mean for the employee, for the third party? How does it affect the people?
It's boy, that's kind of a loaded question, because there's how does it affect their work and how does it affect them? And I'm not an HCM specialist, or I love leading people and I love organizations, and I've seen what remote work can do positively and can do negatively, and each individual is a little bit differently. Let's start on the part that is the part that's the person themselves. Individuals have to become more accountable for what they deliver and how they work and when they work. Organizations have to become more flexible to be able to meet that demand. They're going to have to meet in the middle and figure out how that is. Remote work is going to have guardrails, depending what you do. If you're taking care of maybe you're a client manager for an insurance or hospital system, and you're dealing with PHI and people all day, you can't go down to the Starbucks, plug in, and securely connect and have open conversations about people's health, right? So people are going to have to look at the context of the work they're doing, and organizations are going to set up guidelines for the type of work they do and what they can do and where they can and cannot do it, and what work can be done externally and what work should be done in protected space. As simple as, do we allow printers at home to print documents that are now protected information by regulated in different jurisdictions, or do we say no, printing, you can't print, all right? And in order to do that, you have to come back to an office. There's going to be guardrails and guidelines that are going to have to be developed in the context of everyone's job and the industry they're in. So I think that's number one. People are going to have to come together on this. But for a workforce, they're going to have to learn how to use new technology. They're going to have to think about how they authenticate, what different types of authentication they use. Like, we're going to have to train people a little differently to make it more secure, to ensure that we can deliver the data securely. They can work from anywhere in the world, not just on a VPN, but securely in remote environments. And so some technology will change for them, but most, I think the biggest change that as leaders and as business people we're going to have to help our employees through is what is appropriate, not inappropriate, to when you're not working within a protected environment.
Roland, you touched a little bit on mobility and the the place where people are working is changing almost by the hour now. Can you get a little deeper on what the mobility challenge is?
Yeah, it's funny. I was mentioning that businesses have to take their business applications and move them closer to the workers are going to be. Make them mobile ready, make them SASE ready, make them enabled to work from anywhere. Because here's the reality. They're one day an employee may be working, in an office location, but that may be only 2 days a week, and the other 3 days they have to be as effective, if not more effective, from home. Or you switch contractors. Let's say you have a service organization that has an outside call center, and that call center fails, and you have to migrate that call center quickly because of another pandemic or because of jurisdictional data considerations where you can't operate in that country and you're going to move it quickly. You have to be able to do that to another organization very quickly. So we have to enable our business applications and infrastructure to operate in the totality of our digital ecosystem. What that is our business, not just third-party connections or VPNs or, one mobile app. It's the entirety of our business within that digital ecosystem we've created.
Great. And the change in the work site, the workplace, the mobility piece has obviously introduced some new risks. Can you discuss a couple of those risks?
Yeah, there's, some of them have been there, but it's just greater, due to the size of it. And so let's talk about data. First of all the work we're doing around the world of AI and all the work we're doing around being multinationals or multi-jurisdictional, even if you just operate in the United States, but you operate in different states, that all requires different handling of information and protection of information. Last year it was 17 new laws. We're on par globally for like 31 new laws this year. It is a big hill for global security, privacy, and risk management organizations to figure out and ensure that they're compliant. And so part of that is, where's the data, who has access to it, where is it managed, where has it gone to? And the further you diversify your endpoints, the harder that is to manage. And not to say it can't be done. It certainly can be done. But when enterprises and organizations don't have their handle on it within the enterprise and within their cloud infrastructures yet, and now we're segregating folks from the office locations into their homes and managing informational assets in their living rooms, or in their home offices, that adds another risk. The other thing we're seeing is obviously authentication. When we're talking about authenticating into the environment, we have to do it at a higher level. There are attacks that are purpose-built, and some of the largest attacks in the world were perpetrated against individuals, and whether they're office people, admins, executives, engineers, at their home, right? Because they have weaker security in their environment. They don't have all the firewalls we have. They don't have all that type of security, so they're specifically targeted, and then they piggyback through. So some of the advanced authentication, like the SAML2 environments, the ability to conditioned on risk profiles to up the authentication if necessary, if something seems bad. We have to think about being able to put that as steps for our employee to get access to what they need in association with the risk that we see. And I think the last area around the person is identity. Like, Tom, you walk into the office tomorrow. They know it's Tom, and you go up to your, the help desk, and you say, "I forgot this. I did something stupid. Can you give me access?" And they say, "Sure, Tom." When you call in, and that isn't you, it's a synthesized AI voice that someone's made, and they give you administrative or executive access to certain information because it's you, but there was no way to identity proof you at the time, that's problematic. And we've seen 2 really big attacks like that just in the last month that caused catastrophic damage to large infrastructure and that they're still reeling from. So those are all risks associated with remote access within our environments that we should be thinking about.
Yeah, thank you. It's very insightful and certainly shows folks a path forward, and it can be completed. So thank you again for your time today, and great discussion.
Oh, thanks for having me, Tom. Thanks.